What I really want to do is to talk, I will endorse everything that James has just said, and I'm just thinking, I'm not sure why I'm here actually, because I'm going to say some of the things that are very similar to what he has said. But I want to look at a bigger picture than that, I suppose, because with my background, I suppose I understand a heck of a lot about what's going on in terms of climate and so on than maybe a lot of other people. And all I can say is I'm really seriously concerned about what's happening. And there are things, if anybody has read Humanity's Moment, which is a wonderful book by Yoel Gerges, who is not only an Australian climate scientist, but an absolutely renowned international climate scientist. And Humanity's Moment, her main message is this, and that's what we just sang about out there in a parody I just wrote. The world no longer is in his hands or in the world's hands. The natural systems of the earth at the moment are not coping with the result of what we're doing. It's fighting like crazy to try and somehow adapt those natural systems to the impact that we have made. And so I'm here because I do believe in climate change, but I'm also here because I have so many people who I talk to who want to say, the weather's changing all the time. Well, all that shows, I'm sorry, is they do not know the difference between weather and climate. Climate is actually defined by saying climate is in fact the constantly recurring patterns of weather in a particular place. And I don't know about you, but all of the flowers in my garden are blooming way beyond what they should be doing. And when I look at the sort of forecasts that are going on in the world, then I don't have any problem at all about knowing that climate change is an issue. But a whole lot of other people say, well, I don't believe in it. Well, what I want to say is that there's a whole lot of other reasons that James has actually talked about to some extent, and I'm going to talk about too, apart from all that, about why we should be looking at moving to renewable energy and sustainability. Okay, first of all, I'm going to refer to three books in what I say. James has referred to one, The Big Switch by Saul Griffith. It's one of the best books that you can possibly get to understand a whole lot of things, not about climate, but about Australia's position in the world to be able to be a leader in renewable green energy. And I'm going to give you some more reasons about why it's so important that Australia does that. And I'm going to do that by talking about another book by Ross Garnaut, who is probably one of the best energy economists that we've got in Australia, and also a book by Alan Finkel, the previous senior scientist in Australia, who's just retired. Garnaut, Griffith and Finkel and a whole lot of other people are saying exactly the same things. Alrighty, this is a pretty self-explanatory slide. We're all going to go, as James said, we're all going on an electric journey. Whether you like it or not, you're going to go on it. I don't bother talking to people who deny it because they'll be rolled over anyway. It'll just happen. And the reason that it's happening is because it's just a normal, natural evolution in energy technology. As Saul Griffith and also Garnaut say, we didn't end the Iron Age because we ran out of iron. We ran out of the Iron Age, or we stopped the Iron Age because we just found something that was much better, was more efficient, was cheaper, was more reliable. And that's exactly what's happening in the energy transformation as well. The whole movement towards renewable energy would have happened anyway without climate change. I think it's wonderful that the two things have actually occurred together, but it's fortuitous because technology was moving that way anyway. One of the reasons, of course, is that simply we have 10,000 times the amount of energy that Australia needs every year for nothing. It's there today, it's shining today, 10,000 times the energy we need. So why on earth, when the technology's developed, and it has been, why shouldn't we use it? And the other thing about it is that we in Australia, there are two really important things. The first one is that Australia is one of the best placed countries in the world in terms of renewable sources for energy. Whether you talk about sun, wind, or ocean currents. But the other side of that is that Australia is one of the countries that is going to suffer some of the greatest impacts of climate change if we don't move towards renewable energy. See if I can get it right this time. Yeah. I think also what people who I talk to don't understand, this is going to mean absolutely significant changes in our lives. We're talking about doing something that was bigger and is bigger than the Industrial Revolution and is going to have greater impact than the Industrial Revolution had. And there were a lot less people in the world at that time than what there are now. That the changes that we're going to go through are absolutely enormous. We will have to rebuild every single model and every single system that we've developed for our social lives and our economic lives. Because as we move to renewable energy, if you think about it, you'll know that the systems and models we've developed are all around fossil fuel. One of the big issues is going to be how we deal with a movement from personal ownership to community shared ownership. Let me give you one example. I happen now to live in a strata unit, which I hate, because the law that we've created around how we live, strata law, is so far behind anything in terms of trying to look at community solar panels, community solar batteries, community sharing of energy and power, that there's got to be massive change. There's got to be massive change to be able to take petrol combustion cars off the road and be able to start to move to small vehicles that we don't have to take cars, big cars to the shopping centre and so on. If we think about our whole area of the way in which our banking system works, our insurance system works, it's all based in the same way. The whole concept of social insurance is now really, really questionable because we've got hundreds of thousands of homes around Australia that are not able to be insured anymore. How do we deal with that? And they're just some examples of the size of the change that we're talking about. But the point is that every one of the changes that we've got to make are positive. They're going to make our lives better, even though sometimes people think that's not true. And so the responses we've got to make are positive responses, not human ones. And one of the problems in that is that human beings, the psychologists will tell us, are one of the last animals to actually start to adapt to significant changes. I want to talk about 5 reasons to move to renewables. And the first one is financial savings. I echo everything James said. You know, when we talk about what should we do in our homes, well, every one of the things James mentioned is there. I want to talk about 4 out of the 6 because they're the ones I've got personal experience. I would have had personal experience of a home battery system because after driving a hybrid for 13 years, I was going to take my battery out of the hybrid and use it as a home battery. Would have cost me nothing except maybe to fit it. So I want to talk about those 4 things. And every one of those things has saved us money, big money. Solar panels, I won't go into the same story James has, but it's exactly the same. And now it's much better because my solar panels were fitted at the very first time you could buy solar panels. We didn't have the sort of meters that you were talking about, for example. We didn't have the way in which you can turn on all of your appliances while you're generating energy automatically while you're at work. So you can do your dishwashing, you can do your clothes washing, you can have your air conditioner running, you can do all the things that you want to do with your appliances now, just simply automatically, remotely, while you're generating the energy that you've got from your solar panels. As far as induction cooktops, I'm the cooker in the house. I've been the cooker in the house for the last 25 years. I have cooked on induction cooktops for most of those 20 years, and I would not cook on anything else. When we moved into our strata unit, unfortunately, we had gas, and I hated it. I hated it because of what I knew it was doing to the air around us. I hated it because it was so hard to clean. I hated it because it wasn't as efficient as what my induction cooktop was where I'd left at Bayview. But very quickly, I got an induction cooktop, and I wouldn't cook with anything else like most of the chefs in the world. Induction cooktops were actually invented for the top chefs in the world, in the top restaurants in the world. And that's why they're so good. And I could talk for ages about induction cooktops. Heat pump hot water systems, I'm trying to get that happening at our strata. At the moment we've got gas, but we've got a few deniers in my particular unit, and I'm still working on them. Heat pump, reverse cycle air conditioning, we've had for over 20 years as well. And all I can tell you is, again, our cooling and heating bills have plummeted because of that. I drove an electric vehicle hybrid for 13 years, 250,000 Ks. I never had one bit of trouble with it. It was the best car I had ever driven. I thought, now I drive an MG EV. That's even better. And I wouldn't swap it for the world. And my next car will be an EV, and it will be even better than what the MG is. Okay, so in terms of the EV, I saved about $5,000 when I bought it. That was in terms of subsidies and sales tax refunds. I've saved $1,200 at least in terms of fuel. It cost me $10 for a charge, and I usually charge it once a week. So, you know, the savings are amazing, and in terms of servicing, it is the cheapest car that you can buy as far as service goes because there's hardly anything to do to it.
Thanks.
All right. Number 2, security. I'll give you one example. Angus Robertson, who has a wonderful case study up on our website, he put in solar panels a little while ago. When the first blackout came, he was blacked out too. Then he put a battery in. Didn't have any trouble in the second blackout, he was laughing. The other thing about batteries is that they're becoming cheaper and cheaper. All I can tell you is that the developments in battery technology from the Energy Next conference that I was at in Sydney just a few months ago, the developments in battery are absolutely unbelievable. Lithium, for example, is well and truly passé because it's dangerous, it's too hard to extract, and it's difficult to recycle. People are now making batteries, salt water. There are a British company, Faradion, Telecom in Melbourne's whole central headquarters is run by packaged batteries based on salt water. Broken Hill, in the last couple of little weeks, has announced compressed air battery, which it's going to put in, which will store all the battery for the new mine, all the new energy, for the new mine in Broken Hill. Battery sales at the moment are running at 1 in every 6 installations of solar, whereas they were once 112. That was in 2022. So there's massive developments in battery, and batteries will only continue to come down. Efficiency, okay, you can look at all the physics on it and the chemistry on it. The basic rule is if you've got gas, 30% of your energy is what you're using. 70% is you've lost. Whether we're talking about in the home with a gas cooker, so people with asthma and lung problems, it's not real good for you. That's the way that Saul Griffiths convinced his wife to be able to get rid of her gas stove, because she loved it. When he told her about what it was doing to his kids in terms of asthma and lung complaints, that's when she changed. Same with petrol combustion. Petrol combustion engines, one of the most inefficient engines we've ever created. So, you know, when you go and fill up with petrol and you start driving your car, well, anything up to 80% of the energy that's being produced is going into heat in the car. So that's how efficient petrol combustion is. I put my foot down on my floor in my EV and most of the energy's going straight into my driving. Increased energy efficiency, of course, means reduced power bills, and that's exactly what James talked about too. Health and safety, I've already mentioned. The most important thing for me about induction cooking is only the pot gets hot. That's the only thing on the whole stove that gets hot. So you can touch it anywhere else. You can put a piece of paper over it and it won't burn. You can't burn yourself on anywhere else, and none of your heat is going anywhere else than into the pot. So it's the most efficient form of cooking we can possibly imagine. More deaths out of cardiovascular disease from emissions as far as road transport goes, which contributes nearly 30% of our emissions, than people who are killed actually in road accidents. So the idea of moving to electric vehicles has got enormous implications for improving health and safety. The other last thing I want to talk about, which is very important, is our economy. If I had, how much time have I got? None. Okay. All right. There's an amazing article which, in fact, John Hewson wrote in the Saturday paper this Saturday, echoing some of the things Saul Griffiths said last week. Garneau says it, Finkel says it. Every economist in Australia who knows anything about economics and trade and where Australia's trade is going will say the same thing. What Hewson's talking about is the loss of value in the Australian dollar. The reason for the loss in the Australian dollar currently is very much to do with the way in which China slowed down on imports of our particular raw materials. But what he's now saying is that when we look at the rest of the world, if we keep digging up and shipping out as the basis of our international economy, then I'm sorry, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. That our very international economy and the value of our Australian dollar in international monetary markets depends on Australia moving to renewable energy. Why? Simply because there are more and more countries in the world that are simply saying we don't want any materials produced by energy that is not renewable. The European Union's already done it. It's already imposed a tariff on that, and that will happen all around the world. So the secret to Australia's solving of that problem is not to just dig up and ship out, it is to process, using renewable energy, which we've got much more of than most other countries, and then to trade it. So to turn bauxite into alumina and send it out, to turn iron ore into some steel and send it out, so that it can be used by countries where, in fact, they haven't got the same sort of renewable energy we have. Okay, that's it. I'm really happy to talk to anyone. I'll be around after.
Thank you, David.